Hello, and welcome back to Speak English Daily.
Hi, everyone. We are very happy to see you here today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're talking about childhood memories. It's funny how certain moments from years ago can stay in our minds while other things disappear completely. Sometimes I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can still remember details from when I was 6 or 7 years old. Childhood memories have a special feeling. They often make us smile, laugh, or even feel a little nostalgic. Mike, do you enjoy thinking about your childhood?
I do. In fact, I think about it more often as I get older. When I was younger, I didn't pay much attention to the past. I was always focused on what was happening at that moment. But now I enjoy looking back and remembering the people, places, and experiences that helped shape who I am today. Some memories are very vivid, almost like watching a movie in my mind. Others are much more blurry, and I only remember small pieces.
That's interesting because I feel the same way. Some memories seem so clear that I can remember the weather, the sounds around me, and even what I was wearing. Then there are other years of my childhood that feel almost empty. It's strange how memory works. We don't choose which moments stay with us. Our minds seem to decide for us.
That's true. I also think emotions play a big role. If something made us very happy, excited, scared, or surprised, we tend to remember it better. Ordinary days often disappear from memory, but unusual moments remain. For example, I don't remember hundreds of regular afternoons after school, but I remember special events, family trips, and unexpected experiences.
Speaking of memories, what's the earliest thing you can remember? I'm always fascinated when people talk about their first memory because everyone's answer is different.
My earliest memory is probably from when I was around 3 years old. I remember standing in my grandmother's kitchen. She was baking something and I was sitting on a chair watching her. The surprising thing is that I can still remember the smell of the food. I can't tell you what happened the next day or even the next year, but that one moment stayed with me.
That's amazing. My earliest memory is completely different. I remember being at a playground near my house. I was trying to climb something that looked huge to me at the time. Looking back now, it was probably much smaller than I remember. Childhood has a way of making everything seem bigger. Parks felt enormous, school buildings looked massive, and even short distances seemed very far away.
That's such a good point. Children experience the world differently. Everything is new, so everything feels important. Even a trip to a nearby store can feel like a big adventure. I think that's one reason childhood memories often feel magical when we look back on them.
I agree. Another thing I remember is spending a lot of time outside with friends from the neighborhood. We didn't need special plans. We would just meet somewhere and find something to do. Looking back, those simple moments were some of the best.
I think many people can relate to that feeling. Childhood often has an innocent quality. We didn't worry about many of the responsibilities we have now. We were curious about everything, and even ordinary days could become memorable adventures.
Those adventures often came from the games we played. When I think about childhood, games are one of the first things that come to mind. We didn't have smartphones in our hands all day, so we spent a lot of time creating our own entertainment. Sometimes the games were organized, and sometimes they were completely made up. Did you have a favorite game when you were growing up?
Without a doubt, hide and seek was one of my favorites. It was simple, but it never got old. Every hiding place felt brilliant when you were a child. I remember squeezing behind furniture, hiding inside closets, and even trying to hide in places that were far too obvious. The excitement came from waiting quietly and hoping nobody would find you.
Hide and seek was popular where I lived, too. What always amazed me was how serious everyone became during the game. Children treated it like a major competition. People would spend several minutes planning where to hide. Looking back, it's funny how much effort we put into it.
That's true. We were surprisingly competitive. Nobody wanted to be the first person found. Sometimes friendships were temporarily affected because someone felt another player wasn't following the rules properly.
I can believe that. Another game I loved was tag. It required almost nothing except a group of energetic kids and enough space to run around. We would spend hours chasing one another. By the end, everyone was exhausted but happy.
Tag was great because it encouraged people to be adventurous. You had to take risks, change direction quickly, and think ahead. Some kids were incredibly fast. Others were skilled at escaping by making unpredictable moves.
Did you spend most of your time playing outdoors or indoors?
Mostly outdoors. My friends and I were constantly riding bikes around the neighborhood. Our bicycles gave us a sense of freedom. We felt like explorers, discovering new places, even though we rarely traveled very far from home. Every empty lot, quiet street, or small path seemed exciting.
I remember that feeling. A bike ride could make an ordinary afternoon feel special. But I also enjoyed indoor games, especially board games. Rainy days often meant gathering around a table with family members and trying to win. Some games were based on luck, while others required strategy.
Board games were a big part of my childhood, too. They taught patience, teamwork, and sometimes how to lose gracefully. Although I wasn't always very graceful when I lost.
Most children aren't. Did you ever invent your own games?
All the time. In fact, some of our most memorable games didn't have official names. We would combine rules from different games and create something completely new. Looking back, children are incredibly imaginative. Give them a backyard, a few friends, and a little boredom, and they'll invent an entire world.
That's such a good observation. Children don't always need expensive entertainment. A simple idea can become hours of fun.
Speaking of fun, one of my friends and I once created a game involving a ball, 2 boxes, and a point system that made sense only to us. During one particularly intense moment, I threw the ball much harder than I intended. It missed my teammate completely, flew across the yard, and hit a flower pot. The flower pot shattered instantly. We both froze and stared at the pieces on the ground. The game ended very quickly after that, and I spent the rest of the afternoon explaining what happened to some very unhappy adults.
That story reminds me of another big part of childhood, school. For many of us, school is where a huge number of memories are created. We spend years there, meet friends, learn new things, and experience all kinds of emotions. When you think about your school days, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first day of school. I still remember it surprisingly well. I was very nervous. Everything felt unfamiliar. There were new faces, new rules, and a completely different environment from home. I remember holding my backpack tightly and wondering how I was supposed to fit into this new world.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. My first day was similar. I remember looking around the classroom and wondering whether I would make friends. As a child, that seemed like one of the most important questions. Looking back, it feels funny because children often become friends within a few hours.
That's true. Children usually adapt faster than adults. By the end of the week, many of us were already talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Some of those classmates became close friends for years.
Did you have a favorite teacher?
Yes, I did. There was one teacher who made learning feel exciting. She had a way of turning ordinary lessons into interesting experiences. Even difficult assignments felt manageable because she encouraged us instead of making us feel discouraged. She noticed when students were struggling and always tried to help.
Great teachers really leave a lasting impression. My favorite teacher had a wonderful sense of humor. She understood that children learn better when they're relaxed and comfortable. Her classroom felt welcoming, and students weren't afraid to ask questions.
It's amazing how much influence teachers have. Sometimes a few encouraging words can stay with someone for years. Did you ever get into trouble at school?
Nothing serious, but I definitely had a few memorable moments. One thing I loved was school trips. Whenever our class visited a museum, a farm, or another educational place, it felt like a major event. Everyone was excited from the moment we boarded the bus.
School trips were always fun because they broke the routine. Even the bus ride became part of the adventure. Students who were usually quiet in class suddenly became very talkative.
That's so true. Another thing I remember clearly is lunch break. It wasn't just about eating, it was a social event. People exchanged stories, jokes, and sometimes even food. It was one of the best opportunities to spend time with friends.
Lunch break was definitely important. It gave students a chance to relax before returning to lessons. Some of my strongest memories involve conversations that happened during those breaks rather than inside the classroom.
Speaking of classrooms, I still remember one particularly embarrassing moment. We were reading aloud, and each student had to stand and read a section from a book. I was feeling quite confident because I had practiced the night before. When my turn came, I stood up and began reading. Everything was going well until I accidentally skipped several lines and started reading a completely different paragraph. The story suddenly stopped making sense. I kept going for a few seconds before realizing everyone was staring at me. Even the teacher looked confused. The whole class started laughing, and I wanted to disappear under my desk.
That's the kind of moment that feels huge when you're a child, but later becomes a funny story. The good news is that every student has at least one memory like that, which means nobody stays embarrassed forever.
That's very true. When I look back at school memories, I also end up thinking about what happened after school. Family life played such a big role in childhood. Some of my favorite memories aren't connected to classrooms or games at all. They're connected to weekends, family dinners, and spending time with relatives.
I know what you mean. Childhood often feels like a collection of family routines. At the time, those routines seemed ordinary, but years later they become some of our most treasured memories. Every household has its own habits and traditions, even if family members don't realize it.
Weekends felt very different when I was a child. During the week, there was school and homework, but weekends felt like full of possibilities. Sometimes my family would stay home and relax. Other times we'd visit relatives or spend the day somewhere together. Even simple activities felt exciting because everyone was free from their usual responsibilities.
My weekends were similar. Saturday mornings always felt special. I could wake up without rushing anywhere. There was a sense of freedom that I rarely experience now as an adult. Sometimes my family would work on projects around the house, and sometimes we'd visit grandparents, aunts, uncles, or cousins.
Visiting relatives was a huge part of my childhood, too. Those visits often turned into mini adventures. There were always conversations, food, and plenty of people sharing stories. As a child, I didn't always pay attention to what the adults were discussing, but I loved being surrounded by family.
Family gatherings had a unique atmosphere. Different generations came together in one place, and everyone contributed something. Some people brought food, some brought stories, and some brought energy and laughter. Looking back, those moments helped create a strong sense of belonging.
Family dinners stand out in my memory as well. They weren't always elaborate, but they gave everyone a chance to sit together. It's interesting how many conversations happen around a dinner table. People talk about their day, share news, and sometimes tell the same stories repeatedly.
Every family seems to have a few stories that get repeated for years. No matter how many times you've heard them, someone eventually tells them again during a gathering.
That's so true. Did your family have any traditions that were unusual or different?
Actually, yes. We had one tradition that many people find strange when I describe it. Once every year, usually during a large family celebration, all the children would participate in what we called the Mystery Box Challenge. One of the adults would fill several boxes with random objects from around the house. The children had to reach inside without looking and guess what was there. Some boxes contained harmless things like fruit or toys. Others contained items with unusual textures. Everyone laughed because the guesses were often completely wrong.
That sounds both fun and slightly terrifying.
It was a little of both. The adults enjoyed watching us overreact. One year I was convinced a soft cloth was some kind of exotic animal. My cousins still remind me of that. The tradition continued for many years, and it became one of the things everyone looked forward to during our family reunion.
I love traditions like that because they create memories that belong uniquely to one family. They become part of a family's identity.
I agree. Years later, people may forget specific gifts or meals, but they often remember the traditions, the laughter, and the feeling of being together during those celebrations.
Family traditions also influence the way children imagine their future. When I was young, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to become when I grew up. It's funny because children's dreams can be incredibly creative. We don't always think about what is practical, we think about what sounds exciting.
That's true. Children often have unlimited imagination. They don't see many boundaries. If something looks interesting, they can picture themselves doing it. What was your dream job when you were a child?
You're going to laugh. For a while, I wanted to become a treasure hunter.
A treasure hunter?
Yes, not an archaeologist, not a historian, a treasure hunter. I imagined traveling around the world, finding secret maps, discovering hidden caves, and uncovering lost treasures. It sounds more like a fantasy adventure movie than a career.
I love that answer because it's such a childish response. It shows how powerful imagination can be. Children often create entire worlds in their minds.
What about you?
I wanted to be an astronaut. I was fascinated by space. I read books about planets, rockets, and space missions. The idea of leaving Earth and exploring somewhere completely unknown seemed incredible to me.
That's a classic childhood ambition.
It is, but I was very serious about it. I remember studying pictures of spacecraft and pretending my bedroom was a space station. Looking back, I admire that level of determination. Children can become completely focused on a dream.
Did you have any heroes or role models when you were growing up?
Definitely. Some were famous people, but others were much closer to home. I looked up to teachers, relatives, and older students who seemed confident and capable. Inspiration can come from many places. Sometimes one person's kindness or success motivates you more than a celebrity ever could.
That's a good point. I think role models help shape our goals. Even if we don't follow the same path, they encourage us to believe that achievement is possible. Of course, many childhood dreams change over time.
They do. As we learn more about ourselves, our interests evolve. Some people eventually work in the fields they dreamed about as children, while others discover completely different passions.
Speaking of childhood thinking, I also remember believing some truly strange things.
Now we're entering dangerous territory.
I know. Children can come up with some remarkable misunderstandings. One thing I was convinced of was that adults knew everything. I genuinely believed that turning 18 somehow unlocked all the answers in life.
That's hilarious because adulthood quickly proves otherwise.
It certainly does. I remember asking adults complicated questions and assuming they always knew the correct answer. It never occurred to me that they might be guessing.
I had a similar misunderstanding. For years, I believed that teachers actually lived at school. I couldn't imagine where they went after the final bell. In my mind, they simply stayed in their classrooms waiting for students to return the next morning.
That's amazing.
It is. One day I saw a teacher at a grocery store and it completely shocked me. I remember staring at her because my entire theory about teachers collapsed in that moment.
Children are wonderfully curious, but their conclusions can be very funny.
That's true. I also believed that swallowing a fruit seed would cause a tree to grow inside my stomach.
I heard that one too.
For months, I was extremely careful whenever I ate fruit. Looking back, it's ridiculous, but at the time, it seemed perfectly logical.
One of my mistakes involved a science project. We were supposed to bring a small plant to class. I misunderstood the assignment and brought a handful of grass that I had collected from the yard that morning. I proudly presented it to the teacher while everyone else had actual plants in pots.
That sounds like an accidental mistake that felt much bigger at the time.
It did. I was embarrassed, but now I think it's funny.
That's one of the best things about childhood memories. Many moments that felt like disasters back then become stories we laugh about years later. The consequence wasn't serious, but the memory lasts forever.
Listening to all these stories makes me realize how much childhood has changed over the years. Many of our memories involve being outdoors, making up games, visiting friends without planning ahead, and finding ways to entertain ourselves. Children today are growing up in a very different world.
They are. Every generation experiences childhood differently. The biggest difference is probably technology. Children today have access to information, entertainment, and communication tools that we couldn't have imagined when we were young.
That's true. Technology has opened doors that simply didn't exist before. If a child is interested in science, art, music, or languages, there are countless resources available. Learning opportunities are much more accessible.
At the same time, I sometimes wonder whether children miss out on certain experiences because of screens. Many of my favorite memories happened outdoors. They happened when there was no schedule and no device competing for my attention.
That's a fair point. Screen time can become a distraction if it replaces everything else. Some children spend less time exploring outside, meeting friends in person, or creating their own activities.
One thing I miss is the unpredictability. We would leave the house and have no idea what the afternoon would bring. Maybe we'd ride bikes. Maybe we'd invent a game. Maybe we'd discover a new place to play. There was a sense of adventure.
I agree, although I think children today still find adventure in different ways. Their experiences may look different, but that doesn't necessarily make them worse. Digital spaces have become part of modern childhood.
That's where our friendly disagreement begins.
I knew it was coming. I honestly think childhood was a little simpler before smartphones became such a major part of daily life. Friendships felt more direct because most interaction happened face-to-face. If you wanted to spend time with someone, you usually had to meet them in person.
I understand that perspective, but I think modern children benefit from staying connected more easily. Friends can communicate even when they're far apart. That's something previous generations didn't always have.
That's true, but constant connection can also create pressure. Children may feel they always need to respond, stay updated, or compare themselves to others on social media.
That's one of the challenges of modern childhood. Social media can be useful, but it can also create unrealistic expectations. Children are exposed to far more information than we were.
Another thing I notice is independence. When I was young, parents often gave children more freedom to solve problems on their own. We learned through experience.
I think independence is still important today, although it may develop differently. Children now navigate both physical and digital environments. They need skills that previous generations never had to learn.
That's a good point. Every generation faces unique challenges. Maybe it's unfair to compare them too directly.
I think so. Childhood isn't necessarily easier or harder today. It's simply different. Some aspects have improved and some have become more complicated.
I like that answer. Every generation gains something and loses something. The important thing is helping children build strong friendships, stay curious, and enjoy their experiences.
I agree. Whether memories come from a playground, a backyard, a classroom, or even a digital world, what matters most is the connection, growth, and happiness those experiences create.
Thinking about all these memories makes me realize that childhood gives us more than stories. It gives us lessons that stay with us throughout life. At the time, we don't always recognize what we're learning. We're simply living day by day. But years later, we can see how those experiences shaped our character, our values, and even the way we see the world.
I completely agree. Childhood teaches many things without formal instruction. We learn how to make friends, handle disappointment, solve problems, and adapt to change. Some lessons come from success, while others come from mistakes. Looking back, I think many of the most valuable lessons came from situations that seemed ordinary at the time.
One lesson I learned was the importance of appreciating simple moments. As children, we often find joy in small things. A fun afternoon, a favorite snack, a conversation with a friend, or a family activity can feel special. As adults, we're sometimes so focused on future goals that we forget to enjoy the present.
That's a great lesson. For me, childhood taught resilience. Things didn't always go the way I wanted. I lost games, made mistakes, struggled with assignments, and occasionally embarrassed myself. But children have an amazing ability to recover. One difficult day rarely stops them from trying again the next day.
That's very true. Children can be surprisingly resilient. Another thing childhood gave me was perspective. When we're young, every problem feels enormous. Then we grow older and realize that many of those worries eventually disappear. It reminds me that today's challenges may not seem so large in the future.
That's a valuable way to look at life. Time changes our perspective. Many moments that felt stressful become funny memories. Many fears turn out to be temporary.
Is there anything you particularly miss about childhood?
I miss the sense of possibility. Children often believe that almost anything can happen. They approach the world with curiosity and optimism. There are still responsibilities, but they don't dominate every thought. There was also something wonderful about having entire afternoons available to explore, imagine, and create.
I agree. I miss that too. I also miss how easy it was to be fully present. Children can become completely absorbed in an activity. They're not constantly thinking about schedules, deadlines, or long-term plans. They focus on what's happening right in front of them.
That's something many adults try to rediscover later in life.
Before we finish, I have a question. If you could spend one day as your 10-year-old self, what would you do?
That's a great question. I think I would spend the day doing all the things I loved most. I'd ride my bike, visit my favorite places, spend time with friends, and enjoy dinner with my family. More importantly, I'd pay attention to every detail because I'd know how quickly those years pass. I'd want to remember every conversation, every laugh, and every moment.
I love that answer. For me, I would spend the day with family and friends too. I'd revisit the places that seemed so important back then. I'd walk through my neighborhood, play outside, and enjoy those simple routines that once felt completely normal. Knowing what I know now, I think I'd be much more grateful for those everyday experiences.
That's a beautiful thought. Childhood may not last forever, but the memories stay with us. They remind us where we came from, how we've grown, and what truly matters. Some memories are funny, some are emotional, and some are unforgettable. But together, they create the story of who we are. And that's what makes childhood such a meaningful part of every person's life.